Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Case by Case. I'm so sorry for the delay. Oh, I was afraid I was going to lose everything. I uploaded there's a mass amount of information that I uploaded today. So, welcome to episode 9 of the Delphi Vault, which has taken me almost 3 weeks to put together. And I have a very special guest today by the name of Quester, who has spent years researching, following, documenting this case. So we are going to dive into, again, the timeline of February 13th and 14th. And hopefully we make it as easy to follow as possible. I can't promise you that everybody will understand the complexities of the information we're going to go over today. Hopefully, it's not too bizarre or too crazy. But let me see here. I just want to thank all of you for being patient. I want to thank all of you for being here. And we are, hey, Tom, how are you? Tom is about to become a mod. Tom has been here for quite a while. Tom, I'm going to make you a mod, so just give me a minute. In the meantime, let's get started.
Joyce Williams.
It's getting scared now. It's getting cold.
Liberty Rose Lynn German.
Missing, abducted, we don't know for sure.
Last seen at the High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana.
Delphi is just not one of those places where any of us ever thought that something like this would happen.
Despite that video, despite that audio, nothing happens, seemingly, for 6 years.
The judge did find probable cause for an arrest of Richard Allen. He's been charged with 2 counts of murder for the murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German.
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it?
No. They got the wrong guy. There's no way.
There are other people who were looked at for this.
Shame on you!
It's some sort of a religious sect/cult
Shame on you, Richard!
that follow Odinism.
Shame on you, Richard Allen!
I believe they sacrificed a girl and killed another one.
And law enforcement insists no one's ever been cleared.
Baldwin, can you provide any comment?
Journalism. It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
I guess my mic was muted for a moment. Welcome, Quester. How are you?
Hi, Amy. Not so bad. You?
I'm good. After the whole delay, I'm good now that I haven't lost everything that I uploaded. Are you ready?
Ready as I can be.
Okay. How's everybody in the chat doing? There's quite a few already here. There's been several waiting. And today we have what we're going to go over is, first of all, I want to recommend that if you are someone who avidly follows the case and you're documenting things, please have a pen and paper ready, because some of the stuff that we're going to go over today is going to be read to you. Then we're also going to show you. I have, for those of you in the chat, or for those of you who follow the channel on the replay, etc., I have taken several of the maps that we're going to be discussing today and uploaded them onto the community page. And I've also uploaded them into the case-by-case discussion group. I know that sometimes, depending on how you're viewing, how you're listening, it's hard for you to see what we're presenting on the screen. So I went ahead and uploaded the maps for you to look at up close and personal, which will help. But today's going to be we're gonna drop a few game changers if that's probably the best way I can explain it. So let me see here. Quester, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and discuss your history on the case before we get started the presentation?
Certainly. I've been watching this case almost from the start. I got involved probably about 6 months after. And what was coming out just didn't seem right. So I got even more involved. And I'm a bit of a nut for facts and figures. And from that moment on, it's sort of been a tunnel vision on this. I've been collecting the times, data, everything. And it's just got worse and worse from a logical point. So here I am.
Which that seems to be literally the issue with a lot of people that follow this case.
Yeah.
That you kind of get sucked in, you kind of figure out that, okay, something's not right. We're all going to we're either in this together or we're going to argue with each other. And I think for the most part, what we have to do is we have to stop going down the rabbit holes that are so bizarre. And even when we feel like there's someone who's not telling the truth, there's a lot of people in this case that aren't telling the truth. What we have to do is we have to take the facts that we have and then clean and tighten those facts up and narrow it down to what are the real possibilities here. And I think that today we're gonna kind of start that journey. And I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint for today. And I'm going to read an excerpt that I've created for today's live about today's information. So the information presented today is the result of extensive research gathered over several years. While every effort has been made to compile and analyze credible sources, not all of the material discussed can be verified as absolute fact. Our goal is to critically examine this information, identifying what can be supported by evidence and thoughtfully setting aside what cannot. This process is about seeking truth, not confirming assumptions, and we invite you to join us in that pursuit. Justice for Abby and Libby is why we're here. And also justice for a man that the majority of us who are here feel has been wrongfully convicted of this crime. So we are going to start off with the basis of the day. We're going to start off with the basis of the Hoosier Harvestore footage and why it could ultimately be a major issue in the timeline of the day of February 13th, 2017. So, Quester, I'm going to let you discuss this because we have several more slides in regards to the Hoosier Harvestore camera and why the camera itself is an issue. So, go ahead.
Right. Probably the best place to start with is looking at the camera itself. To the best of my abilities, I've tried to find out what it is. Yes, that's it. And it appears to be a turret camera. Now, on the face, it looks fine. Yeah, that's a really good security cam. However, not for what it's being used for here. The turret cameras are really designed for watching foyers, entrance vestibules, that sort of thing. If they're used outside, they're very restricted in what they can do. As you can see on here, it's got a distance in the range of 70 to 80 feet. Well, yeah, that's the usable distance. It can see further, but past 80 feet, the picture is all but useless. So it also depends on where it's positioned. Now, this was positioned on the corner of the building, way back from the road. I think it was 115 feet from the road, which, as you can see, is 30 plus feet. Yeah, 115, 30 plus feet, 35 feet beyond its usable vision. The consequence of that is anything it sees out on that road will not be clear, will not be reliable. You could be looking at a yellow car and it might come up as a white. You could look at a red car, it could come out as black. You can't really make the real details. You can't see a number plate. You can't see even if there's a driver in it. And that's the problem we've got with these pictures that have been produced.
So here we have two different images that I've uploaded that are, one on the left-hand side is what we should have been shown in trial as an exhibit, what the car that they're claiming that belongs to Richard Allen would have looked like. However, at trial, we were given the enhanced version because the camera is not capable of providing us a clear visual of the car. So we have what the jurors were shown on the right-hand side.
And if you notice, in both pictures, the car appears to have been stretched. That is a problem with the camera trying to move and capture at the same time at long range. It's totally distorted, as I was saying.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's a variable of it. They want us to believe this is the same vehicle that was photographed in Rick's garage. Yet, when you run this through multiple variations of AI, it comes back as some sort of a crossroad SUV. And then you deal with the lighting underneath the vehicle. And even these two photos that I have on here don't really replicate what lighting they try to convey to us through the rims and the spokes of the car. So, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I was quite amazed at the picture that the state put up. You could see through the spokes on the rear wheels clearly. You could see daylight. Now, given that it's a moving car, probably doing about 30 miles an hour, there's some trees on the other side, and it's low down and at long range. I believe it would be impossible to see through those spokes at all, far less light shining through them. That to me suggests that it was a stationary car. That was the basis of that picture.
So
obviously, I can't prove that. Sorry?
Right. No, I mean, exactly. Like no one can really prove that, but when we get into the discrepancies of the Hoosier Harvestore camera timeline and how all of the exhibits are time stamped by the state, and we don't have a really valid reason as to why the Hoosier Harvestore camera is off by 54 minutes in advance. It was just agreed upon that the camera was off. Yet we're left with these images that don't quite seem to be, I don't want to say real images, but they seem to be implanted into a timeline in a video of a video that we've never seen. It all is screenshots of a video that we're being told exists.
Yes, I'd agree with that. I don't think we've ever been shown a cam picture with its original timestamp on it.
Mm-mm. And that goes for the entire day. I mean, I don't know if 54 minutes fast is something that they came to the conclusion of that would make their timeline fit, but the Hoosier Harvestore camera is a problem.
Yes, a big problem.
Okay, so what I want to get into next is, so we've talked about the Hoosier Harvestore camera being an issue, which can disable, and I don't use that word lightly, I use it heavily, disabled the timeline of the entire day. When you can't trust the camera and you can't trust that timeline, it basically disables the rest of the day. Then we're going to get into the cell phone towers. And they're, from my research and from help of others, we have 2 known active cell phone towers, and then we have a third that was active, inactive, or shut down before it was even built. We'll get into that. But we have 2 cell phone towers. And Quester, do you agree that these are 2 separate towers, or do you think that these 2 are literally the same one?
I've looked closely on the maps, and it would appear they are 2 towers very close to each other. It
Okay.
strikes me as odd that AT&T would have 2 towers that close. I can't see what they would gain from it. Perhaps it's other services using it.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the Google Earth map because I have them marked on here, and it's curious that they both, I mean, like, they literally are side by side. I wanna make sure you guys can see my screen. Okay. Hey, Candy. All right, I'm letting my computer catch up. Give me 1 second. So it looks like it. So Quester and people in chat, are you guys able to see my screen?
I can, yes.
Is it moving?
Yep.
So here we side. One is at 3451 North Wells Road, and one is at 3217 North Wells Street. Forward, these would be the 2 towers that Libby's phone would have bounced off of, whether it be a ping or a GPS signal, which is, these are to the north of Freedom Bridge. Let me see here. I want to make sure that I get a really good distance away from the Delphi High School. I'm looking for it because I have so much on this map. Okay, so in reference to the two towers and the bridge. So we have the two towers that are here and here, 3451 North Wells and 3217, both on Wells. One's on Wells Road, one's on Wells Street. Then you drop down here and you have the Delphi Community High School. And the reason that's important is because, and number one, this compound here at the Delphi Community High School, it's not just the high school. It's also the junior high, number one. Number two, when you look at this area where the high school is, see, you got to the left, you have the Delphi Community Middle School, and then the high school is to the right. Then when you come back over here, why would the video that's initiated on Libby's phone ping at the high school versus her location when there is a history of her phone being other places at different times? When the geolocation is pinged or the GPS location is activated, it pinpoints her location precisely. So here's and then at 2:13, when the BG video starts, it's my understanding that the video ends at 2:14:34. And it's 21 seconds after that video ends that the GPS designates at the Monon High Bridge. But the entire video itself shows a location of the Delphi Community High School. Am I wrong?
I believe that the audio video showed a location of the Delphi High Street for the first 14 seconds, and then it flipped to the bridge sort of halfway through it, which is incredible.
Okay. Well, I think there's been a discrepancy on, it was the first 4 seconds of the video.
Or was it?
But in all actuality, it was the actual flipping of the GPS location didn't happen until, I have written down here, 21 seconds after the bridge guy video ended. The bridge guy video ended at 2:14:34, and then 21 seconds after. And if I'm wrong, in the chat, please correct me. All right, chill out. Sorry, guys. I have an old man golden retriever at my feet. It's getting ready to storm here, so he thinks the world's going to end. So do we have it? Do we have any? Do we have anybody in the chat that feels that that's wrong or we're off base in discussing that? Anna says, True Crime Web did some tests at the bridge about phone location. Results vary, inaccurate and variable. I'm not smart enough to discuss these things, but the True Crime Web video might be a resource. Okay. So we have the two towers, which the information is listed here. They're both on Wells Street. They're side by side, which I just showed you on the map. And they are both registered to AT&T, which is the same cell phone provider that Libby had. Then there is a third, and I'm going to pull up the third. And as I'm pulling up the third, Quester, do you want to discuss the third cell phone tower?
Very hard one to discuss. It's got some very strange history. I'm not even sure who owns it now. It's been used by a collection of people, one of which was the government. It's been shut down and restarted, I think, 3 times. And one of them, it shut down before it was even built, according to the data. So it's an extremely strange tower. There's no data on who owns it now that I can find. And there's no data on who's using it. So make of that what you will.
And the more curious aspect of it is that it's directly across the street from Ron Logan's property.
Yes. And if you were to triangulate with towers, that one would provide the third
Logan's
one.
Property. Yeah. It is literally across the street, and I'm assuming this would be Mears' property.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So you can clearly see here, even on Google Earth, the tower itself. And you would think that this would be the tower that anyone in the area would be utilizing, but at that point in time, it doesn't seem like that was the case. All of the towers that the phones were pinging off of were bouncing off of the Wells towers, which are the two that are side by side. All right, let me pull this off. So next we have, what we're going to get into next are cell phone pings. And there's a difference between cell phone pings and cell phone GPS. And I'm going to relay this information. And if it's accurate, I want you, Quester, to discuss. If it's inaccurate, I want you to be counterproductive and tell me. But what we have on the pings, as far as when we heard for hours from law enforcement on the 13th that the cell phone was pinging all over the place. It was pinging all over town. They thought the battery was dead or it was turned off, et cetera, et cetera. So based on what an actual definition of a ping means is, there has been a lot of talk about pings. It may help to explain that those are and how they work. A phone will ping when it gets close to a new tower, when you change the connection status, or when it needs to establish a connection. For example, a phone call. When the phone sits still all day unused, it doesn't need very many pings. But every time you enter the range of a new tower, the phone is going to send out a ping. Cell phones, example, towers communicate with each other through what is known as a passive signal. This is a very low powered signal that is not intended to convey anything specific about or from the phone user. Instead, it's just there so that the phone and the network can stay in touch with each other. So this again takes us into having a question about the times presented by the state. We already find that the Hoosier Harvestore camera times are not reliable. Then we get into the Betsy Blair Fitbit times, I'll bet they're questionable, in fact, upset the state timeline. Now we have clear evidence that the state's timeline regarding Libby and Abby on the bridge and the photos, video, and audio are under question. Within this info is a designation of the nearest tower. If the designation changes, like you are driving, the phone notices and sends out a ping to update its location to ensure the best possible communication with the overall network. You move, you ping. You turn on, you ping. You use, you ping. All of that is automatic. A forced ping is a completely different beast. It is when one contacts the carrier to ask them to send a ping. This will instantly update your location within the carrier network. Phones' use of a SIM card to create a digital ID tag on a carrier network. This info is paired with a digital key. A phone that doesn't have the key for a packet of info will just ignore it. When the key does line up, the phone listens, and it can be the digital signal sent via radio waves that are intended for it. So, what this boils down to is, I'll read this. Occasionally, the tower gets a signal with your phone's ID on it. It will then try to get your phone's attention. Your phone will respond, and depending on the attention needed, it will either send a ping or a request for an ongoing connection. Again, this is automatic. Every mobile phone has a unique identifier known as the IMEI number. SIM cards also have unique serial numbers known as ESN numbers, but that's not 100% secure. A person can clone a mobile phone. They must obtain these numbers and use them to reprogram the chip inside a phone into another device. If they get access to your phone, the IMI or the Apple ID, that's key, everyone. The Apple ID, they can see anything you do on your phone in real time and even act as you. The radio signal of the clone will be slightly different from the original signal. This difference can alert a service provider to a threat and possibly help them trace the clone. So when you hear the term clone, you're thinking an entire a re-replication of something. Look at it in more simpler terms. Look at it as you have a phone that you no longer use. You get a new phone. That phone then becomes your main phone on your Apple ID. However, you never deleted the old phone, which brings me to when you have an old phone and a new phone sharing the same ID, this is what can happen. Yes, your old iPhone can potentially report GPS or location data separately from your current device if certain conditions are met. This may cause confusion if someone else is carrying the old phone around. This goes into a theory of, did the Patties give Abby an old phone to utilize when it's connected to Wi-Fi or to cellular data? If there were two phones out there with the girls, is the problem that we're seeing with the GPS and the phone pings crisscrossing between Libby's phone, which is the current phone on the account, versus an old phone that still has access to the account. That's the question. And this can happen when the old phone is still powered on, it is connected to Wi-Fi or cellular data, it is still signed in to your Apple ID, especially iCloud or Find My iPhone, and the location services are turned on. And how can this cause confusion? The old phone may send its location data to Apple services such as Find My iCloud, Find My iPhone, iCloud, or location sharing apps. It could appear as your location if someone is checking Find My iPhone or location sharing in iMessenger. This may mislead location-based services, loved ones, or even law enforcement. Remove, and so the way to prevent this is to remove your Apple ID from an old iPhone, settings, sign out, turn off Find My iPhone on the old device, erase all contact, settings, general, transfer, or reset iPhone, erase all context and settings. Then it gives you a link on where to go to make sure that you've done all of those steps to remove the old iPhone. So with that being said, do we in chat understand where the problem may lie if we're dealing with multiple phones that both belong to the Patty household, i.e. Libby's, i.e. a phone that Abby could have been given, etc., etc., etc. And Quester, how do you feel about that information?
Fully agree. There is one little thing I would add to it regarding the security of an old phone. If they're both iPhones and you take one out of your system and then you put them both together, it is possible for the old one to sync with your new one without you realizing. Therefore, it's a good idea to keep them apart at all times. Put them in the same drawer together and you could end up with two phones again. It has happened. Okay.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Yes, no, I agree. And I think that explains if we're all, I think the majority of us believe that, well, here, I will pull up the next slides because the next slides show us, and these are, I'm assuming, I don't want to say accidental, but these are things that were displayed by Nick McClelland in several of his filings. Where he exposes how many devices were actually found and documented in this case. He's got on February 26th of 17, there's a Delphi flip phone found under the bridge. On March 11th, there's a Delphi LG found phone in Clinton County. There was an Axiom Cellbrite download on that phone with a white chip off report. There's an Amazon tablet with a pink case. You've got Liberty German Samsung Galaxy. I'm assuming that's a tablet Then he's incorporating holder screenshots, holder Samsung phone ID, Jackson, Stewardson, Cochette, Liberty's iPhone exam. I mean, there's a massive amount of technical items that are related to this case that were not presented at trial, that were not discussed. Then you come down here to where he's got a list of persons of interest, and you have Anthony Schatz, Bob Shode, Brad Holder, Eugene McKinney, Glenn Cunningham, Kevin Stralston, Larry Wayne Ray, Mike Nipple, and Patrick Westfall. Then there was a tower dump done by the Verizon tower dump victims, which makes no sense why that would be inserted there, and the Verizon tower certification. So then you bump over to this, which is almost all of the same information. It's a little bit more detailed as far as up here at the top that's highlighted with the one Western Digital 3.5-inch 500 gigabyte SATA hard drive, which is not outlined as to where it came from. They have it labeled as a compilation of data contained on 8110 and then a code. The file on this hard drive contains February 26, 17th, Delphi flip phone found under the bridge. Well, there was a flip phone found under the bridge. Clearly, Nick McClellan states it here. That flip phone contained images of a wedding. And from what I've been able to gather, that information off that flip phone was never identified. Now, if they identified it, they kept it under wraps, which I don't know why that would be the case. But this flip phone had wedding photos on it. I don't know if it was from an actual wedding, if it was from a wedding rehearsal dinner or a bachelor party. It was just cataloged as wedding photos. But the flip phone was found. And we're going to get into, as we continue on this journey, we're going to get into other phones that were found. So, Quester?
Yes.
Any comments on that?
No, I think you're doing fine.
Okay, I'm trying. Okay, let me. So next, okay, this is where things get really interesting. So Quester has done all of the research on the Monon High Bridge trails, the woods, and all of the known tracks that you can walk within the woods in this area. This is a invaluable resource. And then down here on the left-hand corner, I have, because I wasn't sure how the map would be seen to viewers, but down here in the left-hand corner, I have highlighted again what he has up here in the square key. So the red track shown on the map here is well-known trails to the majority of people who visit the trails. Doesn't matter if you're a local or someone else. So the red track demonstrates the trail for most people. The yellow tracks indicate well-known trails by locals and hunters. So the majority of people who live in the area and people who hunt in the area are more familiar with the yellow tracks on this map than people who don't live in the area. And then the light blue tracks are walkable tracks that are less known to everyone. But if you find yourself walking in those woods, these are areas that actually have some sort of a ran down pathway or have been traveled through before. Is that right, Quester?
That's correct. They're well trodden. You can see
Okay.
them.
And then the pink, which is it's a very small area on the map, is a old creek bed. And what can you explain to the viewers what the significance of that old creek bed is?
The old creek bed is usually dry, but in times of extreme flow, the water will shortcut across and come out just past the Monon Bridge, where Bridge Creek joins it. It's very, very rare that it does that, but it's a very wide. You could drive up it. It's that wide.
So what is that on the same side as the crime scene?
No, it's on the south side of the creek.
Okay.
It sort of cuts off the corner of the creek at that point.
Okay. I've tried I'm trying to make these maps available on my community page and in the Facebook group, just so if you're having a hard time seeing them through the PowerPoint presentation on this live stream, that way you guys can view them in their entirety. So check both of those places. So we haven't even gotten into the timeline of everything yet, but I wanted to discuss, we have a lot of discrepancies about Betsy Blair's Fitbit. And I don't think that most people are aware of the discrepancies, number one. Number two, there's on the state side, there's a lot of people who want to utilize the accusations that, well, Rick Allen being AKA Bridge Guy, that the four girls that we know of as Bree Wilbur, Riley Voorhees, Anna, and them, that they claim to have seen, there's no reason why he and Betsy Blair would have never crossed paths. Now, my issue with this whole scenario is the fact that the individual that Betsy Blair and them claim to have seen, none of their descriptions fit Rick Allen. So I have a hard time believing that the individual that they seen at all was even Rick Allen. So the argument about who's seen him where is really almost irrelevant. But taking the state's case and their narrative, you have to entertain it. So we have the four girls who claim to have seen this individual. And people want to know why him and Betsy Blair would have never crossed paths. Well, you've got Betsy Blair who takes 3 loops throughout that entire day. And a portion of that loop is going down the 505 trail down towards the water's edge. Then you also have the time gap of, am I wrong? Is it 30 minutes, 45 minutes where she leaves the trail entirely to use the restroom and then comes back? Quester, do you want to?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to that is yes and no. If you go via the a store cam, she left at 13:15 and returned at 13:46, which would be half an hour.
Okay.
But if you go by her Fitbit, let's see. She was at she left at 1300 and returned at 13:30, which again is half an hour, but it's, as you can see, is 15 minutes difference to the other one.
Right. And that's based, and that's where you compare the Hoosier Harvestore camera and the Fitbit.
Yes.
Okay. So we know that the Mears lot, which is where she parked, which is also considered a trailhead, which I think in my earlier videos, I deemed trailhead number 2 because I felt that the trailhead out at the very start of the trails by Freedom Bridge should be dubbed trailhead number 1. Based on the mapping data, in the Mirror Cemetery, it's approximately 2.5 miles east of the Delphi Library, which means overall it would have taken her 6 to 7 minutes to travel from the Mears lot to the Delphi Library each way. Is that right? Or do you
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
you agree with that?
Yeah, I
So
worked it out at a 5-minute, but it's not worth arguing a minute either way. Yes.
okay, so you're talking in the 30-minute period that she's gone, whether you believe the Hoosier Harvestore camera or you believe the Fitbit data.
Yeah.
It's a total of, at the minimum, 14 minutes, giving a little bit of leeway of walk time, getting in the car, starting up the car, parking, getting out of the car. I would give her anywhere from 16 to 18 minutes, seeing how this timeline is so tight on where people are supposed to be and when. So within that 30 minutes, we've got almost a 6 to 8 minute gap of where was she? Not that she has to explain herself, but when leaving and coming back, there's a little bit of room to wiggle on when she left and when she returned and what she was doing. The Fitbit data divides activity into 15-minute intervals. So every 15 minutes, the Fitbit is updating itself. Unlike the Apple Health data, which is updating itself every 10 minutes. The relevant bar that covers the 1:45 p.m. to 2 p.m. marked in red in the zoomed in graphic shows a moderate level of steps, which when we get to the graphic, it's important because Betsy Blair is supposedly on the Hoosier Harvestore camera at 146. However, her Fitbit is showing that she's walking. Since 1:46 p.m. falls within the 15-minute interval, there is visible activity in that block. The Fitbit indicates walking or movement during that time window. This suggests the wearer of the Fitbit was likely walking or physically active at 1:46 p.m., not necessarily driving a vehicle. The Fitbit uses 15-minute interval bends, so 1:45 to 2 p.m. is grouped together. There is step activity recorded during that interval, seen as a red bar indicating lower intensity compared to the higher green bars around 12 to 1. Fitbit tracks motion from wrist movement and step count. So, Quester?
Yes.
Do you want to add to that?
Yeah. The Fitbit, in fact, said that Betsy Blair started being active at 13:30, 1:30. And that is 16 minutes before her car was seen on the store cam. I'm not fully au fait with Fitbit, but as I understand it, they don't really register when you're in a car because you're not moving according to the parameters that they require. And that would suggest that she was walking from 13:30.
And that then means if she's okay, so if she's walking at 13:30,
she cannot have been driving past the store cam at 13:46 going east.
correct. However,
yes.
We have this diagram that shows at 1:48, she's already walking. So we have that Fitbit data. Jackie Johnson, we are trying to figure out which is correct. However, there's other data that proves that she's on the trails after Abby and Libby. Is that right?
That's correct. She entered the trails after. Yes, it's the only way that will fit what Kelsey's been saying and what Betsy Blair has been saying, and sort of fit the state narrative.
So Anna asks in the chat, which is a good question. As a phone seeks new towers, how might this affect a Fitbit accuracy? She said, sorry if this is an ignorant question. I don't think it's an ignorant question at all.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
My understanding, it won't affect it.
You said it won't affect it?
That's my understanding. Do you disagree?
No. I know. The only thing that I think that we are at a loss of is the information as to whether or not Betsy Blair's Fitbit was synced with her phone. So the phone, if Betsy Blair's carrying a phone, which it's almost like an Apple Watch, your Apple Watch is synced to your phone. So we don't know. It was never asked. It was never discussed at trial if her Fitbit was connected to the phone, which would help solidify what GPS location we're dealing with and the time frame.
Yeah, if it's not connected, it's a standalone and it'll work by itself using geolocation and time zone.
So that brings us to so we've discussed all of, let me just backtrack a little bit. We've discussed all of the ulterior routes that are on the trails. We've discussed the mass amount of technological, like the phones that were obtained throughout this search. And I'm sure this is only a portion of them. This is just I think this is honestly an accidental mishap by Nick McClellan releasing this amount of information amidst the filing, that he's so stupid to think that we wouldn't pick up on it. But you've got all of these different trailways that could be utilized. We've talked about the distance between the Mears lot and the library. We've talked about the inaccuracies of the Hoosier Harvestore camera and how that can affect the timeline going forward. That brings us to this map, which shows you this map here shows you, this is the timeline between what, noon and 2?
Just before noon and just before 2, yes.
So this shows you all of the activity in the area of reported statements. This is a collaboration of things that we've been able to trace as being, I would say, 75% accurate of those who were reported being on the trail that day. We cannot be 100% accurate simply because we have no definitive answers from law enforcement on who was interviewed, who wasn't. These are based off of social media reports that individuals that claim to be out there reported, law enforcement interviews, and cell phone information that we have been able to determine are factual. So as you can see, and this map incorporates Rick Allen's original timeline that he claimed he was out there. But as you can see, this map and this and all of these different activities going on within noon to 2 p.m. makes the area very, very, very busy when the state wants us to believe no one was out there except for Betsy Blair and Bridge Guy and 4 girls leaving the area of Freedom Bridge. So, Quester, do you have any comments?
Yeah, you're probably going to be getting to it fairly soon, but one of the main things to take home from here is at Freedom Bridge, things do not align with the 4 girls, including Riley and Bree, being at the Freedom Bridge at the time that the state said they were.
And then we also have the scenario of, wasn't it Rayleigh and Isabel who claimed, was it they claimed they didn't leave at that time? They went back onto the trails to take photographs, or did they return?
It was
After
Rayleigh
leaving.
who said that back in, I think it was 2018. She said she went over Freedom Bridge and then turned around because her sister wanted to go back and take a few more photos.
So you have them 2 returning, possibly. That's not accounted for. Which then takes us to the actual cell phone data itself, the meters, the timing that the phone moved, and the possibilities of where the phone could have went. And for me, I don't know about anybody else, and I don't even know about you, Quester. For me, this map signifies the most realistic movement of the phone. When you start, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I do have one problem. Although
Okay.
the distances, etc., are all correct, I find it very hard to believe that somebody could have come all the way from the bridge, all the way up to the cemetery, crossing the creek, etc., in what, 5 minutes? But the distance is what they travelled, and that's the only place where they could have got to anywhere with that distance. But the timing is odd.
So what you're saying is based on the cell phone data that, okay,
Yeah.
so we have point A, which is at 141. And that is where Libby's posted her, that was a photo posted in the car, correct?
That was the one that was posted at 143.
In the
I
car?
don't know what the one at 141 was.
Well, I think there was multiple that were posted in the car, but the one at 143 is of Abby and Libby in the car, posted to her Snapchat account. And
Yes.
then, okay, can you explain point B, which is 151? Where is that?
That is it's sort of a nondescript position. It's calculated from the distance that they walked, but it's about about a third of the way to the bridge.
Okay, so that would
There's
have
no
been,
marker for anything. Sorry?
is location B considered a GPS point?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So can you describe what location B actually is? Like where does that time in that location come from?
These come from Libby's Apple Health data.
Okay. So then they come down, they cross the bridge, and we know that at let me see. Okay, so 207, which is 1407, Liberty's phone is unlocked and accesses Snapchat. Then it's locked again. Then it's okay. So is it at 2:08 that her phone is unlocked for the last time?
Yes, I think that's the last one where it was successfully unlocked.
Right, because it's shortly after the bridge guy video is shot that the phone is turned off again, and then there's an attempt to open it, and it's failed.
Yes.
So we have the photo of Abby on the bridge at 1407, which is 207, which required the phone to be unlocked, and then Snapchat is accessed. Then the phone is locked, and then at 2:08, the phone is unlocked, and I would believe that would be the last time that the phone is unlocked by whatever mechanism Libby's phone security allowed, whether it be a thumbprint, I think it was a thumbprint, or a code, but that was the last time at 2:08, which is a significant time because, and not that everything plays in part at once, but at 2:08, we also have Ron Logan's phone pinging in the area of the Monon High Bridge. We also have at 2:08 the white vehicle seen on the Sandiford camera driving in towards the private drive and the bridge. All three of those things happen at 2:08. Then at 2:13, the video begins. And the GPS location for that video when it starts is at the Delphi High School. And it was originally reported that it took 4 seconds into that video for the geolocation to readjust and then reallocate its destination to be at the Monon High Bridge. We're now informed that that's not the case. It wasn't until 21 seconds after, and I hope I'm saying this right, that it was 21 seconds after the bridge guy video ended. So the bridge guy video ended at 2:14:34. And it was 21 seconds after the end of that video that the phone geolocation succumbed to being at the Monon High Bridge. Am I getting that right?
You are, yes. Which
Okay.
would seem a lot more logical than it moving position halfway through a video being taken. Yes.
Okay. So let me check chat because I'm sure everybody in chat's going crazy right now. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I think what everybody in chat is already forgetting about is when we're talking about the cell phone data and we're talking about the GPS of the cell phone. And we're not, let me go back to the very beginning of this presentation and read for you again what we are not doing. This is what we are doing. The information presented today is the result of extensive research gathered over several years. While every effort has been made to compile and analyze credible sources, not all of the material discussed can be verified as absolute fact. Our goal is to critically examine this information, identifying what can be supported by evidence and thoughtfully setting aside what cannot. This process is about seeking truth, not confirming assumptions, and we invite you to join us in that pursuit. So with that being said, I want to reiterate the other packet of information that comes along with that, and that is the fact that if we are talking about multiple phones that were with the girl, it's a ghost in the machine. It's not a matter of being sued. It's a matter of I want to clarify what we're discussing here. And this is alternative possibilities with so many oddities when it comes to the phones based on what law enforcement reported, based on, you know, they couldn't track her by Find My iPhone. AT&T would not ping the phone, yet we find out later they were pinging the phone every 15 minutes. We do find out that the Find My iPhone was activated. There's a voluminous amount of information regarding the phones that should be straightforward, like any other criminal case where a cell phone is being tracked. This one seems to have inconsistencies in cell phone data and GPS information that is bouncing somewhat all over the place. We are offering an alternative theory that is it possible, based on the information that we've been given over the years, that the Patties supplied Abby with a older iPhone that was linked to Libby's iPhone account. And if it was, and it was never disconnected, is that where we are running into cross-referencing of GPS data and cell phone data? And we don't know when these photographs were taken on the bridge. We know what phone was used as far as the photographs go. We don't know where the video, I don't want to say the video, we don't know where the upload came from of the picture of Abby. And is it possible that Libby is holding onto a backpack, both cell phones, to allow Abby the confidence to cross the bridge? We don't know. All we're doing is offering a very realistic alternative to what's going on with the cell phone data. John Walton, I can tell you that the white car footage does exist. It is at 2:08. It is going in towards the private drive. I will also follow up with the car disappears off camera for a short amount of time. I'm not certain that it disappears off camera long enough to drop off anyone or pick anyone up. Drop off, yes, but to pick someone up, no. But the fact of the matter is there is a white car that is pretty much the only vehicle seen from the morning to that time in the afternoon of 2:08 that drives into that area exactly around the time that the girls are on the bridge. The next video on that track is of Brad Weber's white van that travels in. It doesn't stop. It continuously drives in to his residence, which means the gate was not closed, which was a question that we had in the beginning. But unless somebody took it upon themselves to go out and close the gate at the private drive, the gate was open. So the white vehicle traveling in on the private drive pretty much had a clear shot going all the way into the bridge. The biggest question is, who's driving the car? Why was the car there? And why did it go in that direction? Anna, that is a problem. You're absolutely right. The significance about the Bridge Guy video is the girls indicate they will go down the hill before the man speaks. You're absolutely right. And that is why what's going on in the video is so up it's so up for debate that you really, I mean, it can go either way, but you're absolutely right. Libby talks about there's no path here. We're going to have to go down here, as if the intent to go down the hill was already part of the game plan. And then you hear the male voice say, guys, down the hill. It's bizarre. The whole thing is bizarre. So, Quester,
Yes.
chime in.
Yeah, I'm not really impressed with that audio. Apart from all the questions of what was really said, there's the fact that there's absolutely no sign of distress in any of the voices. It's almost like, Sunday afternoon chat near the church, that sort of level. There's no fear, no concern, nothing in anyone's voice. And it strikes me that if somebody was pulling a pistol on you, you'd be a bit concerned.
So what is your opinion? Because I've kicked this around as well, that, well, I guess I have to go back and express my theory, which I've gone over. I don't like digging in or committing to one theory, because I feel this case is so, still, even after a trial, we still have no answers. And I'm kind of open to anything. However, based on the information, and we're going to continue to get into it, I personally, and maybe you disagree. I know some people do. I personally believe that bridge guy came from the south end of the bridge. To me, that would be the most plausible scenario for why the real bridge guys not seen traveling north of the bridge out towards the main trailhead after the fact. I don't believe that Sarah Carball saw bridge guy on 300. We do have an ulterior explanation for that. To me, bridge guy coming from the south end of the bridge would have, one, caught the girls off guard if they were already coming across the bridge, and all of a sudden they see this male individual approaching. I think I discussed yesterday privately with the meeting that we had, that I thought it was interesting that in the 207 photograph of Abby, that she's on the far right-hand side of the bridge. To me, a young girl her size, because I don't feel like she would probably feel very confident up there on that high altitude, windy bridge. She would feel confident walking along the edge line of that bridge. I would have expected to see a young girl walking for the first time across that bridge, probably in the center, like feeling more stable in the center. However, we have her at 207 on, if you're facing the north end of the bridge, Abby's on the far right. Then when the bridge guy video starts, she has completely averted herself over to the left-hand side. So I'm wondering if, at what point did bridge guy show himself? Because we know that at 2:05, we have the photograph shooting towards the south end of the bridge, and there's no one in sight. 2 minutes later, we have the photograph of Abby. Regardless, everyone, of what you feel about that 207 photograph, whether it's faked or whatever, you still have to remain in the doctrine of the state's narrative. That's what's going to matter. Unless someone here and beyond proves that that 207 photo was an absolute fraud, we're stuck with it. And when I say we are trying to eliminate the BS and we're trying to eliminate things that we might feel under the cuff are important, there are a lot of things that we're not going to change the facts of in this case. And I think that 207 photograph of Abby is going to be one of them. So we have to deal with it. So the 207 photograph, there's no one behind Abby. The 205 photograph, there's no one in front of the girls. Where did he come from? If he came from the south end of the bridge and the girls are walking on the bridge, it would be very easy in that closed space, confined quarters on the bridge that he simply walks past and the girls just keep continuing on. Then bridge guy does a U-turn immediately behind the girls. That's what I'm feeling happened. Because, and I'm going to show you why as we keep going through the slides here, but that's right now, that's where I feel the most plausible scenario played out. If I'm wrong, I'll take it. But in my mind, after going through all of the different scenarios, that's how I see it playing out. That makes the most sense. What about you, Quester? And I know that you're not I know that you've not been a proponent of the girls crossing the creek, which is why I love the fact that you're here, because we can debate that.
Well, yeah, I started off that I was seeing an awful lot of saying, did they even cross the bridge? I've now reached a position where I'm fairly much convinced that they did, but it's how and when.
Okay.
I'm also on board with you on that. BG must have come from the south. It is, to me, it's totally impossible that he could have come from the north and not have been seen by several people. Totally impossible.
So when we go through, we've already talked about this map. Then we go to the next map. This is where plausibly the Apple Health data and the GPS information takes you. In all, when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, the girls crossed the bridge, came down here to point D, went down the hill, and I'm assuming based on your calculations that the meters and the GPS gives them enough longitude and latitude to take them all the way up to the cemetery.
That's correct, yes.
To 218, which is where we have, that's the 7-minute flat time, right? Where the 7-minute comes in where nothing happens.
Yes.
But from 2 o'clock, they would have had to have traveled from 2 o'clock, which was point C, all the way to point E within 18 minutes.
That's what the data is saying, yes. They'd have to have done that distance.
Okay, so 18 minutes is that's a good amount of time. When you look at, they were able to come from the Mears lot to point C in under 12 minutes. And I don't want to do an information overload because we have so much information on here. But going to the next slide, that's erasing all of the extra on the map. And that's just showing everyone a clear, precise route from the Mears lot, point A to point B to point C. Point C has them around 2 o'clock, right over the water on the bridge. 208 is where the phone would have been unlocked for the last time. And then is this bottom point here? It's like, I would guess it would be like D.5, where the bridge guy video ends and then the travel starts.
That's correct. The bottom point is within the 414 meters that takes you to E.
Okay. So if everybody wants to argue that pathway, that scenario, that, I know there's a lot of people who don't think the girls crossed the bridge. Let's pretend that we're all in agreeing that they did cross the bridge. Let's just say hypothetically. I'm not saying that you have to believe that. I'm just saying hypothetically, if they crossed the bridge, or not the bridge, but the creek. Crossing the creek would allow for where we are right here. So in the foreground, you see the south end of the bridge in the foreground. Up here by this tree where the white arrow is, that is pointing to you where the private drive travels underneath the bridge. I understand that the actual south end of the bridge is off screen. I don't have a photograph that would incorporate all of this. But you can use your imagination where the south end of the bridge is. The girls came down the hill. They hit that first plateau, which would be down the hill onto the private drive, which is where this white arrow is. Then they would have ventured down, being forced down by BG to this second plateau. The belt that was found in this area right here. That is information that I have that's factual. It was found in this area right here. Then further down in the photograph, in the foreground, you see this, it's almost like a worn down path in multiple areas leading down. So if you were standing at the bottom of this photograph and the photograph lens turned, you would be able to see the creek bed. What's significant about this is we do not know, thank you, law enforcement, because they did not pursue anything in regards to the belt. It was collected, but it was never tested. But if this belt is related to the crime and where it was found, that is wide open space, viewable to anybody else on the bridge, whether you are midway on the bridge or you're on the north end of the bridge. You can still see this area. Look at the trees. The trees are bare. There's no leaves. There's no obstructions. You can still see. Little girls are going to be upset. They're going to be screaming. They're going to be defending themselves to a certain degree. But if you believe the belt is part of this case, this would follow the path line down the south end of the bridge, coming off of the private drive down to this second plateau area where the belt was found to the water's edge. It all lines up. I'm not saying that it does. I'm saying this is a hypothetical of what is a possibility. Now, we've also...
Before you move on from that picture, if you think back to the state's case, they believed that Richard Allen was essentially where your light green sign is when he saw the van. And they said that he was at that time trying to rape. Now, if you really believe that, then that belt would have become incredibly important, wouldn't it?
It would have been, not only would the belt have become incredibly important, but like I have said from day one, look at this environment. Do you mean to tell me that a man driving on the private drive in a white van who drives this path every single day going to and from work would not have noticed 3 people right here out in the open? If Rick Allen would have the girls down here in this wide open, barren space, and If you look at where this private drive is, this is a curvature coming under the bridge. This would have been on the driver's side window of Brad Weber's van. He would have had nothing but the best view to his left as the driver of the van looking out over this area. He didn't see Rick Allen holding 2 girls hostage, attempting to rape anybody. Yet we're supposed to believe that Rick Allen had the 2 girls right here in this area, sees this van, which by the time he sees it coming around this curve right here, would have been too late to hide. He then forces these 2 girls to continue to run forward and travel across the creek without the person driving the van seeing them. That's impossible. It's
Absolutely.
impossible.
The picture, I've got a picture of that particular area taken from the drive. You can see clearly. You'd have to be blind not to be able to see anybody down there.
Exactly. And I think that's why the next slides that we're going to show are really important based on the phone data and what we know based on, thank God for you with all of your years of documenting information, because otherwise we wouldn't have this kind of detail. But if we've argued, what about the fact that the killer bridge guy took them back across the bridge? Well, first of all, we all know based on the video that they would have had to have gone down the hill first, which that's meters, that's time. Then they would have had to have traveled upward, which that's not in the Apple Health data. Retreating back up, because I believe that would have, in the Apple Health data, constituted an elevation change. If we're to believe that the Apple Health data is not documenting downward motion, we do know that it's documenting upward motion. I know that's up for debate, but based on the state's expert and the state's theory, that's not there. But if they were to go back across the bridge, look at in the far left panel who we're dealing with being at the north end of the bridge between 1:30 and 2. You've got Betsy Blair, you got David McCain, you've got Daniel Pearson, you have Shelby Hicks, you have Amber Bridge, you have Kylie Harper. Then you have Carl Abbott, who is reportedly in a canoe on Deer Creek. Then you have David Riley. And then you've got Abby and Libby. Where is Bridge Guy? Where is Bridge Guy between 1:30 and 2 p.m., other than Betsy Blair claiming that she saw a young man with poofy brown hair on the first platform around 2 p.m.? And we know Daniel Pearson claims he arrived at around 1:30. Daniel McCain arrived at approximately 1:30. We have Abby and Libby arriving between 1:30 and 2. You can argue the semantics and the time clock all that you want, but you don't have any of these people claiming they saw Abby and Libby or Bridge Guy. Betsy Blair is not even describing Bridge Guy. She's describing a young man in his 20s who is a 10 out of 10. So I'm going to go to the chat and see how many people are cussing me out. From CPS, that's not true, Jackie. Jackie says it takes no more than 3 minutes to walk from the CPS. Oh, from the CPS building to Freedom Bridge. Okay, that I can possibly agree with.
Yeah.
Because and you know, we can break this um live stream into probably 3 parts because there's so much information when it comes to the Fitbit and where people are and when. But I do know that even under the state's narrative, with Betsy Blair arriving at the Mears lot when she did, when they claimed that she did, to getting to the end of the bridge on the north end, it's really, I mean, she would have had to have jogged. It took me 8 minutes, 0.3 seconds to get from the Mears lot to the very first wooden plank at the bridge. Karen Hall says, UK here. What does 10 out of 10 mean? 10 out of 10 means he's drop dead gorgeous, young man. That's what that means, according to Betsy Blair. So there's that map and that timeline. And I will make all of these maps available so you guys aren't having to fight and try to screenshot them from the live. I will make them all available in the Facebook group and hopefully on the community page. The next map is a little bit more intricate. This is using the meters and the GPS from the phone, taking the girls back across the bridge, and then actually hanging a right there after you get off the north end of the bridge into that ridge line into the woods towards the crime scene. That's how far you would get by 214-31, which still going back across the bridge before you make that right, you're dealing with all of these people arriving at the Mears lot or within the Mears lot, all proceeding towards the Monon High Bridge, yet no one saw anything nefarious going on. Wester, do you have any comments?
No, I agree with everything you've said. This route, it actually ends nowhere. It doesn't seem a logical route to take at all. You're taking a massive risk of being seen yet again. The area you can see from quite a distance as well on that pathway. So it's totally illogical to walk that one.
It is. And I mean, and literally, and I would have to say that I've walked that area before you get to the north entrance of the bridge. I've turned left. I actually have some video of that area. However, I was there in November, so there was still a lot of foliage on the trees, but you're still seen. There was a lot of people on the bridge in November. This was during Rick Allen's trial. So there was a lot of people visiting the area. But I did walk out there in that area. Me and Cherie both did. And you're not hidden. And if it's February and all the trees are barren and there's no leaves at all, you're really going to be exposed. So I know that a lot of people don't like the idea that the girls actually crossed the creek. I get it. And I've been open to that theory for a long time. But when you pin everything down and you track the movements and the meters, and then you're dealing, for me, in layman's language, you're dealing with translating the meters into steps, into distance. And then you have to factor in the timing of the movements. You know, from point A to point B, they moved some points of distances, they moved faster than others. You have to put all of that into the calculation, which I've left that to Quester because I'm not great. Math is not my forte at all.
There is one other thing which should be borne in mind, which I told you the other day. It was a curveball that we are, in fact, talking about the phone, not the girls. And we're assuming that the girls have the phones in their pockets, in their hands, etc. And we're assuming that this is saying it was the girls that took it, but you could throw a curveball in and say, I don't know, John Doe picked up the phone and walked there.
No, you're right.
And it
I
was,
mean, if the phone, and I say a phone because I'm going to say I'm 70% convinced that there was more than one phone with the girls.
I'd
That
agree.
would explain the discrepancies in the phone misinformation. And it would also explain if you've got someone who obviously is there packed and loaded to do harm, that he takes the phone. He's thinking it's the phone they have. Yet there's another phone that the girls have been able to hide, which would have been the phone that was reportedly the active phone on Libby's account. However, there could have been a backup phone that had never been deleted that Abby was being allowed to use. We don't know. And I'm not saying that we know. I'm saying it's an alternative theory that is not preposterous by any means, and it makes sense, and it would explain a lot. It would just take a very good forensic phone data expert to decipher the information. But it's worth discussing. It's worth putting out there for anybody who's listening and watching who may have connections or may have some sort of experience in something like this. But I know personally, I have a phone that I use, and then I have my other phone is a more, it's, I believe, okay, the phone that I use now is an iPhone 11. My other phone that I stopped using is an iPhone 14. I stopped using it because I had it overloaded with information, videos, photographs, etc. Got the new phone. It was a refurbished phone, but it was completely empty. And both phones are connected to my Apple account. And when you do the research on that, if I handed my phone that's sitting here on my other table that's not used, if I handed it to my other daughter and I said, "Here, you're going on a trip, use my phone. It's empty. Take photographs. You don't have to worry about, you know, overloading the phone. Take photographs." There's a good possibility that that phone still being connected to my iPhone account of my normal daytime usage phone, that the GPS and information could be then crisscross with each other. That's what I'm reading. And is that what you're trying to convey when you discuss cloning of a phone?
That's correct. I'm not saying it in a nefarious way. I'm saying it can be totally innocent in the way you've said, but it's still effectively a clone.
And it still can effectively be interchangeable as far as information, especially in an area like this where you're in and out of service areas and you might have a phone that's traveling and a phone that's not. So the phone that's traveling is going to be the one that's being recorded most happenstance from cell phone tower information, GPS locations, versus a phone that's not.
Yeah.
Because it seems
And
that a phone that's in movement is going to be the one attempting to make contact versus a phone that's stable.
that's correct, yes.
Okay, so this is another alternative route, guys, of if we are to when we discuss the girls, they, came off the bridge. We know the girls were forced to go down the hill. We watched them proceed in that direction. Let's say as soon as the video camera turned off, the girls stopped dead tracks and they all made a U-turn to go a different direction. We're just showing you alternative routes that, based on the meters and the traveling distance, where that distance could have taken them. So if they would have at point D at 2:08, they were still on the bridge. At the very bottom of that travel distance, of that little circle that you see there, what if they would have went right and would have went down towards the private drive in the opposite direction? This is how far they would have gone. That would have taken them basically nowhere. It would have taken them not to an area where there's a 2-story incline, which is what we're looking for.
That
ahead.
position that position that it takes you is within. You could see the gate to the drive from there, and there are, I believe, 2 houses close by.
So you're saying if they would have traveled down the opposite side of the bridge versus the side that we know that they traveled, they would have went the opposite direction. They would have been approaching the actual gate that
That's correct.
that was there, and there's 2 houses there. So if we're looking for a 2-story incline, that's a possibility that that's where that 2-story incline occurred.
It's a possibility, yes.
And we don't know if those homes on either side of that gate were 2-story homes.
I
Because
don't
that's
know.
something else.
I'm not sure who owned them either.
So this is another track that the girls could have taken if they would have gone, which we've discussed on here before. If the girls were in fear, if they felt that the man on the bridge was a threat and had said something or produced a weapon to make them feel like they were in fear, the information that I have is that Abby and Libby, or at least Libby by any means, had been scolded by Kay Weber at some point about trespassing on her property.
Yeah.
I think we all know that Brad Weber is very particular about his property. I know from locals, I'm not going to name names, but I actually do communicate with an individual whose family has a property right here off of the private drive. It's a family member who communicates with me, who has said that there was a big discord between Ron Logan and Kay Weber because Ron Logan's horses used to travel back behind his property, down the ravine, and would cross the creek and would make their way up onto Kay Weber's land. So that became a huge discord between the 2 families because I guess Ron Logan wouldn't keep his horses within a certain area. But it wasn't just Brad who had an issue with people trespassing on the property. His mother, Kay, when she lived there, also would run into certain issues with people trespassing. And it's my understanding that she had addressed Libby before about cutting through. I don't know. I can't say it was Libby and Abby. I just know that at Libby at some point, I have been told directly, was told by Kay Weber, girls, you can't cut through here. My point in that topic is the fact that if you are in a life or death situation as a young girl who feels threatened, you know that property is there. You know that there's someone that you can run to. I don't give a shit if they scolded you in the past or not. This view on the far right-hand side of this map shows you there was a direct beeline to the Weber property if it needed to be taken. So when Libby's coming off the bridge and she's recording and she's saying, well, there's not a path here. We've got to go down there. And then Abby comes off. If there was a threat of a bridge guy approaching them on the bridge and telling them, you're going to do what I say, and shows them a weapon, and that man is as far back behind them as he is, the second Abby came off that bridge, didn't they have the opportunity to run? That's my impression. And if they would have ran, this is the route that they would have taken, straight off that path onto the Weber property. And it wasn't what the girls did. They waited for him to approach. I'm not saying that they didn't fearful. I'm saying that prior to him approaching them when they came off the bridge, I don't think that the girls felt that he had intentionally directly threatened them. What do you think, Lester?
I don't think they had any fear at all, which suggests to me they saw no threat whatsoever or knew the person. But as you say, they could have easily escaped. The picture you've got to the right, that light area there, is the cut grass in front of the Webber's house. There's a low fence there, easy to get across. They could have been over there in minutes.
They could have. They could have. It was a straight beeline. Hey, All Eyes. Yes. So All Eyes, if you want to come up, let me know. Just put a yes in the chat and I'll drop you the link. So Taya Miller, she is, so I just through discussions and stuff yesterday, actually, just when I think that I've compiled so much information, every day I learn more. So Kaya Miller, I was informed yesterday, was actually out on the trails on the 13th later in the day. And I didn't know that. And she was out there with Kat. Kat, what is her last name? What's Kat's name?
Kat Marie Cole Richardson.
Okay, Kat Richardson. She's no longer with us, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Very shortly after she met her demise.
And that's a whole nother, so that's why this could be broken up into 3 parts. So Kaya Miller was out on the trails on the 13th later in the afternoon, which might have been why she became part of the search for the girls. If she was out there when all of this began to go down and the girls went missing, because Taya Miller is the girl who heard the screams around 2 a.m. that night after midnight. So that would have been the early morning hours of the 14th. Taya is currently in Rockville Prison, and I reached out to her and she immediately blocked me. She didn't want to discuss anything, which it's frustrating. And I, it's 1 or 2 avenues. They've been so viciously harassed and accused over the years that they're just done with it. Or you can say they have information and they don't want to be involved. I don't know which. I really don't. So Kat Richardson, let me see. We have, for those of you who Kat Richardson was shot and killed. Well, wasn't it ruled as a suicide?
It was ruled as an accidental discharge by her boyfriend, yes.
However, Kat Richardson was with Kaya Miller. I don't know if she was with Kaya earlier in the afternoon. Do you?
Early in the afternoon, I'm not certain. No, I know she was with her when the screams were heard because she's recorded at 2:30. She heard screams and a phone ringing.
And I believe. Okay, let me see if I can pull it up. Um, I had made a post a couple of weeks ago. Let me see if let me pull it up here. And maybe and I probably should have researched this, but I didn't, and I should have. Um, Michelle Weiss, who is a witness to the white vehicle being parked along the side of the road. Is she related to Jerome Weiss?
I don't know.
Okay, so that's
I should have
where.
researched.
So let me share my screen here, and it's probably going to be blurry just because it's like 5 times enhanced. So this was a post made by Kat Richardson's family member. It says on the day of February 22nd. Now remember, the screams and stuff took place after midnight on the early morning hours of February 14th. This was the day the voice clip of Libby and Abby's killer was released. She, meaning I believe it's his sister, Kat, she was airlifted to Indy and died in the helicopter. Nothing was reported about her last hours anywhere. No one can help me. And police have only apologized for their lack of professionalism and grand mistakes in investigating my sister's death. My concern now is for the Delphi community. It raises the question of how things are being handled in that great little town, as well as could the reason they can't uncover Libby and Abby's case because too many mistakes were made in the beginning by police. The man who killed my sister recently attended the Delphi High School, walks among your daughters, sisters, and friends today, flashing his gun around and living with no apparent remorse for taking my sister from us. He is clearly reckless and dangerous. I truly hope the first responding officers to a gunshot wound victim make better judgments in the future, because I wouldn't dismiss the idea that this incident correlated with recent tragedy in Delphi. I pray for justice for all 3 young, beautiful ladies. I pray for peace of some kind for Libby and Abby's mothers. I pray for better protocol and training when handling emergency calls and responding to crime scenes. Signed, a concerned citizen for people of Delphi and Monticello. And then below is a photograph. You guys might have to go to my community page to see it. So this is Jerome Weiss. Are you able to see this, you guys? Is this coming up on my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So this is a photograph of Jerome Weiss. It appears to be reaching through a car window with a weapon pointed at Kat Richardson. I don't know when this photo was taken. It appears that she's taking a photograph to monument the moment. I don't know. But on February 22nd, she died of a gunshot wound, and her brother believes that Jerome killed her. She, Kat Richardson, was with Kaya Miller out searching for the girls in the late morning hours of February 13th, aka the 14th, and they're the ones who reported the screams. She's dead. So there's that. And it's sad. They heard the screams. Apparently, I don't know if they were on the bridge, or I know that they heard the screams coming from the south end of the bridge towards the creek. around the curve, which would actually be in the direction of Ron Logan's property. Am I right?
You're right. Yes.
Okay. So we can, if we need to, let me see. Where do we want to go to next? Um, in chat, do you guys have questions for Quester? Do you want me to pull up Google Earth? Do you want me to go back through the PowerPoint presentation? I'll do whatever you guys direct. Just let me know. And Quester, I'm going to let you have the floor for a few minutes because you've spent a massive amount of time working on this case. And I don't know if you have an opinion or a message to convey, but I want you to have the floor because you've been a tremendous help to me, like many people along the way. It's a community here, and the only way we're going to get to answers is if we all work together. So I don't know who is willing to let their name be put out there. I don't want to name names, but I'm going to say thank you to everybody who's reached out to me, to my lovely attorney in Georgia who has done some serious research for me. Love you. You've been amazing. You've been amazing help. Kathy, my mod, to all my mods, thank you so much. But Quester, I'm going to give it to you for a few minutes and let you have your say. Say what you want to say.
Well, first thing I think I ought to say is, I think you said it earlier, is our real task is not to try and prove who did it, but to prove who did not at this stage. And to do
Correct.
that, it's not a matter of following every single red herring and side road going. They're just going to tie you up in knots. I know that. I spent years being tied up in knots. We have to concentrate on what the state has said and tear that apart. It's for the state to prove who actually did it, not us. It's for the state to prove how it happened, not us. All we have to do is prove it did not happen the way that the state said. And I think there's enough evidence out there, which we're trying to present here as well, to prove that. So we have to be very careful when gone saying, well, yes, but such and such a person said that at 7 o'clock this happened. Probably true, but it's not relevant. Would you agree, Amy?
I do. That's and that is exactly that's exactly what we have to do. And Tom in chat, to answer your question, Brad Holder, another day, absolutely. I'm getting there. I will say this, when I started doing this series, I thought it was going to be easygoing. I thought, everything would kind of fall in line, but you can't go quickly in a case like this with this much information, especially when you have a timeline that is so complex that you're dealing with everything about this timeline. For me, I have found to be complex as far as cameras being off, who is where when they say they're there, and then you've got all the side noise of what people's opinions are. Then you've got people who pop in and out with different information that some of it you can disregard, and others you go, wow, well, that's great to know. So what you're saying, Quester, is absolutely spot on as far as we have to destroy the state's case and prove who did not do this. And we have, I don't want to say I've been sidelined or I've been sidetracked. I just found that there's so much more detail that we need to go through to eliminate what's not important and focus on what is. And I just thought it would be it's great for us to do it together as a community. I know that I'm not going to appease everyone. Not everyone's going to agree with my take on things. I've tried very hard to not commit to a theory or a person of interest, while also allowing for everyone's opinions to kind of like ricochet in my head. But we have to this case, I don't know what this case keeps me up at night. It really does. And I'm assuming that for you, Quester, and for everybody in the chat who I see here repeatedly, live after live, it does for you guys as well. There's just something about this case that the word mysterious comes to mind, but also heartbreaking. That, you know, for me, I can say when the Bridge Guy video was released, the most profound thing for me was hearing the girls' voices. Libby's voice, it just, my jaw dropped. It was such a childlike young girl's voice that I just thought, oh my God, that's her. Like for me, that was the first time I heard her. And that really infuriated me, knowing the outcome of this. That's why I'm here, for all of the good reasons, for all of the reasons that we all should be here. And getting, I feel for the families. I don't know what certain family members' involvement is in this case. I'm not saying they weren't. However, as a mother, from a Anna Williams perspective, from a Carrie Timmons perspective, my heart breaks for them. And this case drives me crazy. And I don't know how it's not driving them to be in the forefront at a podium every single day, demanding real answers. That's really frustrating for me that we're not seeing that happen. I'm not in their shoes. I don't know at what point in a situation like this where you have to say, for my sanity, I have to draw the line. Because I think that maybe as a victim in a case like this, maybe there is that breaking point where you say, I can't go any further. I can't deal with this anymore. I want it to be over. I can't fault them for that. However, I would like to say that's where we come in, the community, the public, the people who I'm no more of a better person than any of the rest of you who are here to do what needs to be done. I just have to created a channel where it's a platform where what we're talking about is more profound publicly. That's what we're here for. We're not the enemy. We're here to hopefully get to the answers that the girls deserve. And on top of that, we have a man that, what is the world going to say to him when we prove what we believe is true and what's happened to him has happened in this society? That is equally as bad as the loss of anyone. His whole world, his whole life has just been snuffed out. Okay, I'm done.
Unfortunately, it's very easy to get caught up in the moment with all sorts of stories and so on. And even with the great, and I really do have respect for the solicitors that Richard Allen had, They were fantastic. They fought. I've never seen solicitors or anyone fight so hard for a person. However, I think McClellan played a blinder with that Odinist stuff. He blindsided them and caught them on a hook there. If they'd have, it's very easy for me to sit here and say they should have done this, they should have done that. I don't know what I would have done, but in hindsight, you can see they were dragged off course by it. And it's so sad.
And you know, I guess from my standpoint, you know, without being dramatic, which I feel like sometimes I am, but when I get up, you know, I work a full-time job, but even on my full-time job, I'm thinking about this case. I do more work. Not and it's not just on this case, it's just the whole concept in general about I don't know what it is about the judicial system that makes me frustrated. I'm just a very strong advocate for equal rights for everyone. And you know, side story, last night we watched some YouTube stuff from a lawyer who covers the boundaries of law enforcement that are crossed. And it was a video that was being reviewed about a young man who had just gotten off work. He worked at CVS. He was sitting on a bench right outside the front door. He had on sweats and he had called for a Lyft driver to pick him up. He had just gotten off work. Police officer shows up, basically accuses him of being a suspicious person, pulls out a taser gun, puts a laser light on him, and starts screaming at him that if he doesn't comply, he's going to let his canine out to attack him, yada, yada, yada. Ultimately, they put this kid in handcuffs. The Lyft driver shows up. The officer is a complete asshole. He says, "You can go away. I'm going to give him a ride." He's getting a free ride to jail. Other officers show up. The other officers are standing around looking at this officer like, dude, you are completely out of line here. And, but they don't step in. This officer's like, well, he's going to learn the hard way. You know, he looks suspicious to me. He probably does work here. I don't give a shit. He's going to jail. Now, when you think in reality, now this was a white young male. When you think of the reality of where we are in society, when somebody who we are supposed to trust, who we are supposed to rely on, takes advantage of that authority, we've lost our way. And when I was going to college, I really wanted to work for the prosecutor's office. I wanted to work for the state in the prosecutor's office. I got sidetracked. I went off and I ended up working in the radio room at the police department. But that was my ulterior goal. And over time, I started to feel like, wait a minute. I always thought the prosecutor's office was the good guys. And I would say in the last 15 years, case after case that I have followed, case after case that I've attempted to be involved in, I'm starting to realize that in a prosecutor's office, it's not always about law and justice. It's about a win. It's about an election. It's about a scorecard and one-upping everybody else to be at the top of your game. And I've seen cases where somebody is absolutely guilty and you see law enforcement, with the help of the prosecutor's office, bend the rules to make a conviction happen, even though all the evidence wasn't there. Does that make it right? Does that mean a killer should go free? Unfortunately, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, I think this person is guilty, so let's bend all of the rules and go out of our way to make sure that the evidence is presented, regardless of how we achieved it, to make sure that this bad guy goes away. Yet, what happens then when you're dealing with somebody who's not guilty, but law enforcement thinks they are? That's why a fair trial, innocent before guilty, matters. And I look at Rick Allen and I think, is he the salt of the earth? Is he the everyday common man living a normal life who thought he did the right thing by coming forward when he did? And now, to his detriment, because of the failures of law enforcement, when he showed up and met Dan Doolin and said, here's my phone, here's the battery, take the information off, here's my address, here's my name, here's my number. And then 8 years later, the prosecution can stand in a courtroom and accuse him of being a nefarious individual because they failed to do their job. Like he's required to hang on to a cell phone from that long ago. And because he didn't, he's now guilty. They failed to do their job. They could have issued a search warrant that week on his house. They could have confiscated every computer in his house. We would have had his cell phone data. We would have had his internet searches. We would have had his Wi-Fi connections. We would have had access to his bank accounts, his transactions, his movements. And because they didn't do any of that, he's to blame, because that's what they conveyed at trial. That's what the jurors who sat on that jury were made to believe, that because he didn't do their job for them, he's to blame. That is where everybody who follows cases like this need to understand, when those kinds of lines can be crossed, we are all in jeopardy. Okay, now I'm really done. I've probably gone off way too far.
No, you're totally right. Unfortunately, it's got to the stage now that if someone came to me and said, I saw something and the man ran away, what should I do? The last thing I would say is go and speak to the police. It's got that bad.
And that's really not how it should be. That's really not, I mean, in my generation, I mean, I'm not going to tell you my age, but in my generation, when I was a little girl, police officers were the good guys. They're supposed to be the good guys. And we have gotten so far away from that, I have a 25-year-old son who, he has barking orders. He knows if you get pulled over, this is what you do. Because this day and it's society. And I mean, I don't know how many people realize right now the jeopardy that Rick Allen is in. And I'm not just talking his livelihood in prison, in Gen Pop, or somebody getting to him. I'm talking about the state of Indiana, who has already made a massive error in the way this case has been handled. You're talking about a judicial system that tends to uphold the lower courts. And if they don't, they're exposing the state to lawsuits. Ultimately, that's what it, in my opinion, I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm saying, based on some of the cases that I have followed, how things like this play out. The higher up the court system you go, the larger the lawsuit becomes. The least likely it is for a upper court to overturn a lower court. And I'm telling you, right now, it's going to take years for Rick Allen's case to even get out of the state level. And I'm heartbroken that Rick Allen's wife chose not to use Michael Osbrook and Kara Weinige, who are offering free legal services. I'm not saying that they're a Kathleen Zellner. What I'm saying is that they would have got the ball rolling with the best intentions, with the best resources, for the right reasons, to help this man not fall behind the 8 ball of a court system who may not have his best interest at heart. And I know there's going to be people out there who disagree with me, but I will be the first one to scream at the top of my lungs 3 or 4 years from now, I told you so. So. Are you there?
Oh, we're here. That was just a bit powerful.
Well, I feel like it needed to be said, and we are probably going to have to do a part 2 and a part 3 of all of this, because we still have. I'll give you guys all a sneak peek of something that we didn't even get into today, and that is the actual massive timeline that Quester has created, which looks something like this. Excuse me. This is one PDF file, and we really need to go through this bit by bit, and I have it dissected into an Excel sheet, but it's going to take hours to go through. And then we have this one as well to go through. This outlines almost every statement, every interchangeable person coming and going from the trails that day, the disputable allegations, etc., 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 that coincide with all of the maps that we've gone over today, the scenarios. And if you guys disagree with anything I presented today, or anything that Quester's presented or we've discussed, feel free to leave your comment in the chat. Just do it respectfully. And Quester, are you down for doing a part 2 and part 3?
Certainly I will, yes.
Okay. So before we hop off here, do you have anything that you want to leave the audience with? We have about 180 people watching.
That's good. We've got 200 of people that are interested in Richard Allen. Hopefully we'll get more.
Yeah. And by the and I know right now, like a lot of people are spreading themselves really thin because they're watching the Karen Reed trial. They'll come back and catch us on the replay, which is great too. So guys, before you leave, please make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button. And we will catch you on the next live. Stay tuned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, mods. Thank you, Quester, for being here. It's been great. Goodbye, everybody.
Cheerio.